it must have been so difficult for her to witness all of that and see all of that going on in her life. Right.
It was horrible. It was horrible. Like
Did
I
she
said,
ever, did Tina ever confide in you or tell you what it was like in all of those days? Did you ever see that vulnerable side where she would talk about what she had gone through?
I have to tell you this is really funny. Tina did not dwell. Excuse me. She lived her life this way. It wasn't something that she just came into. When Tina chanted, she really chanted for freedom, to let go of the past and to go forward. She wasn't one that we sat, and Tina and I used to sit down and drink 2 bottles of wine each, and stay up and laugh and talk until we crawled to our beds. She never dwelled on the past. She never talked. She was never a victim. She never, I mean, the closest I got to that with Tina is when we went to go see the movie Mommy Dearest. And we went to go see the movie, and I love Joan Crawford. Tina loved Joan Crawford. We were whatever. And the Mommy Dearest was the big thing at the time. I'll never forget, we were in Toronto and we had the day off, and Tina said, do you want to go see that movie that you want to go see? And I said, which one? She said, Mommy Dearest. I said, yes. So we went, and we were watching the movie and we're laughing, and we loved the costumes and the red lips and the glamour and all this and da-da-da. And at one point, it was the wire hanger thing. I started laughing, and it was like, because Joan, she looked mad. I mean, everybody knows she looked mad. She was so fabulous. I mean, Faye Dunaway as Joan. And then I looked over and Tina was crying. I never saw Tina cry. I get to see Tina sometimes get a little emotional. I never saw Tina cry. And I looked over and she was crying, and I grabbed her hand and held it. And she said, no, it's okay. And I remember her going, no, it's okay, Ed. Sorry, just, and then she brushed it off and da-da-da. And then later we kind of vaguely spoke about it. And she goes, and she said something like, I could be really cruel. He could be really cruel. But we, otherwise, that she never dwelled or talked about her past. She never talked about, and we never talked about Ike. That was a forbidden name to mention in the house. Rightly so.
So you got to know more about her tragic life story through the media that would never let it go, and through the book, or what, than her talking about it.
Well, you got to remember, I knew a lot because of Aline. I knew a lot because of the boys. I knew a lot because of the housekeepers. I knew a lot because of the kids. No, so that's not true. I did know, but I didn't know in depth, and I didn't. When someone's telling you a story about their life, or Aline would talk about Tina and just go, the Ike, that bastard, or this or that, and da da da. And I actually think in another lifetime I was a journalist, because I did learn that if you kind of lead them to the water and they're thirsty, they'll drink. And that's how I used to get so much information. I never, ever came and said, oh, tell me what it was like with Tina. And, what was, no, never, no. I would just go, oh God, it's such a shame about, Ike, poor thing. I mean, he's been so tired lately. He ain't been tired. He's doing too many drugs. So I knew how to lead into, get information from people. I was very clever.
But he did actually try to hunt her down, shoot into her house, and Rhonda's house, tried to do all kinds of things. And she did want to protect herself because she was afraid. And she used to carry a gun, right? And she took gun lessons. And there is this amazing story about her son, Craig. And I think he's very worthy of mention here because he plays a very significant part. Unfortunately, he died from suicide in 2018, and it must have been so hard for Tina. He was dating a girl called Bernadette, and Michael Jackson's brother, Randy Jackson, and Tina shot him.
Yes, she told him. Tina said to Bernadette basically had split up with Craig. She had married footballer. That went wrong, da da da. And then she ends up with Randy Jackson. And Randy Jackson's a nutter. He's mentally a little bit cuckoo. And Bernadette came, and she was and Bernadette and Tina were terribly, terribly close. And this particular day, Bernadette came over unannounced, and she ran in crying, upset. And it was basically because Randy had gone too far being abusive. And it wasn't, he was abusive physically, but he was also abusive sexually. I do have to say, honestly, and I remember to this day, it's like it was yesterday, we were stunned. I mean, we were like, and Tina went, you got yourself another Ike Turner. You need to get rid of him. And as Tina was giving Bernadette advice about how to get rid of Randy and stop this foolish behavior, he was at the doorbell ringing Tina's intercom buzzer. And he had followed Bernadette over to Tina's because they had gotten a fight and she ran out of the house and whatever, and she didn't know he was behind her or whatever it was, or he had Tina's address. And so we were all on high alert. Oh gosh, this fucking, guy. But it was myself, Lejeune, and Bernadette and Tina that were at Tina's house. And basically, without going to the whole story, again, I'm not going to tell it all, but basically, he wanted Bernadette back. Bernadette said, no, I'm not coming back to you, da 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 da. And then in his mind, he started this rumor that Tina and Bernadette were having some kind of a thing going on, a lesbian thing, which was totally a lie. But he used that as any excuse, and then he decided that he was just going to become a madman. Now this part I don't know for sure. Now that I look back, in reality, going back, oh gosh, 40 something years, he was on some heavy drug. And I don't know what drug he was on, because the way that he did what he did, you had to be on drugs for it. And even after he took up a big pot and threw it through Tina's glass windows, and came through the window afterwards, and Tina reached to get a shotgun and told him to freeze, he kept walking towards her. Nobody in their right mind would do that. He was on something. So now, after going back years, and this wasn't in my book, but I've realized he must have been on some heavy drug, something. But anyway, we always had a drill, what we would do in case it was an emergency, because we would always fear that Ike would do something stupid. And Tina just told him, basically, freeze. And he didn't listen. Tina shot a bullet up to the ceiling. And the rest you have to read in the book.
Right. It's really fascinating. But she was already in her Mad Max mood there, huh? The warrior woman.
Absolutely, 100%. She actually went into action. I mean, and she was so fabulous at it. I mean, she really was. What was her name? Anti-Entity. Anti-Entity. Yeah, she. Two men enter, one man leaves.
Exactly. Now, Eddie, I have an interesting character to talk to you about, and let's see how that goes.
Okay.
Gerard Augustine.
Oh, I loved Gerard.
Well, you did.
You got to remember, Gerard, I was quite young. I was working at the studio at the time. That was before I started driving, and I met Gerard Augustine. He worked for United Artists Records, and he was a bigwig there. And he then
now
later
spill the tea, please.
Then later he became to be Ike and Tina's personal manager, and he's the one that talked Ike into and made Ike aware of how powerful it would be for Tina to do Tommy, and he took them to a different direction with their music. He co-produced Adelaide's Power and a couple songs and stuff like that. And then at one time, when he left United Artists and started to work for Ike and Tina, Ike used to have some apartment buildings behind Bollock Sound Recording Studio, and Gerard had an apartment there. I don't know where you're going with this.
Really?
No, I don't. I'm very curious what you really want to ask me. I'm not
gonna say it if you're not gonna talk about it.
Because you've got me curious about me now.
Great. Now that I like. You've been telling me a lot of stories over the years, Eddie. When we were,
oh my God, what did I tell you? I can't remember now. Fabulous.
You told me that Gerhard was the first guy you were ever with. He took your virginity.
I can't believe I must have been so comfortable with you. I must have. Again, when we met, we got on. Did I tell you that?
You also told me that, amongst a lot of other things.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Gerhard was, he was older. I mean, he was older, he was good looking, he was German. Of course, I was in high school then. I was in high school. I did everything.
But you were almost underage, weren't you? If you look at it from, today's, with today's glasses.
Oh, yes. You probably would look at it and I would have been kind of like on the verge of, but something else too, I'd have to intercept something. It's the same thing. We live in it's a very strange rule of life. When you're going through school, you have your favorite teacher and you have a crush on him. Okay. Us youngsters are not innocent. So we will drop our book in front of our teacher and say, can we stay after class? And we flirt, or we would go to the concerts and da-da-da. It's not politically correct, but this is what we did as human beings. And yes, I was probably on the verge or whatever of age at that time, but I never thought about it like that. And I would have, and as far as I'm concerned, he never did anything wrong because I was more than willing. I was like, that was youth. Youth was, come on. Grow up, like Joan Rivers would say. Oh, give me a break. You know what? I scratched my eye the other day.
On Al Roker's Zipper.
That's exactly what she said. You're correct. No, I did get, Gerhard was a lovely man. He was very gentle. He was very kind. And then also, I was so obsessed and curious about the music business. Honestly, I remember when Gerhard used to work at United Artists, and of course he was showing off a bit. He would show me all around the studio, and then I'd go there and end up leaving with all these free promotional records, and I met the people in the office. And then when I would go to the Ike and Tina shows, all the executive, and I knew Mike Stewart, the president of United Artists Records, for God's sakes, who was responsible for Shirley Bassey and the rest of them. And when Mike Stewart was the one who saved Tina after the Ike thing so she could get back on her feet. And Mike Stewart was the same one that said to Tina when she went with Roger Davies, he was like a big father figure to her. And he said, you can't afford Roger. He wants too much percentage, and he wants this and he wants that. And I'll never forget. And when Tina left Mike Stewart, because he was basically like her manager looking after, the day that she decided to go see Roger and make the deal and see if Roger and Lee Kramer would manage her, I was the first person she told. She came around to see me. She drove in the pissing, I'll never forget, it was pissing down rain. She had on her wellies and she had this big, beautiful cashmere jumper thing on. And she drove up, and I was with my play cousin, Helena Springs, who went out with Bob Dylan and Robert De Niro and all this kind of stuff. And I lived in the guest house, and the houses were connected. Tina, and we invited Tina, and she says, no, Eddie, I need to speak to you. And I said, okay. So we went back into my little bit, and she said, yeah, I made a decision. I'm going to go with Roger Davies. I'm going to let him be my new manager. And I said, oh my gosh. I was the first person she told. That's how close we were. She drove to my house after having a meeting with Roger Davies in Century City.
Even though she was such a star, and even at the time when she didn't have a hit record, I mean, she was still a legend, and she would always sell out shows, right? I mean, so she was still a big name, even though she became incredibly huge, like the biggest star in the world there in 84, 85. But I mean, and she had the children and Aline and Ma, her mother, and all of that. But still, she was kind of a loner and lonely, and she spent Christmas ones all by herself, and eventually with you, right? I mean, it was like
well, she made arrangements. She was actually in her last house that lived in Los Angeles before her success, and we went and got a tree and did all this stuff, and I went over the day before to prepare everything, and like Tina and I would have fun cooking. Like I'm a much better cook than Tina is, and then Tina would be in the kitchen cooking, and she'd go, "Oh, Eddie, come here," and I'd go, "What?" She goes, "Oh, honey, you got to taste this. Now, listen, now you know I can cook." And then I would taste it, and I said, "Oh yeah, it is good." I said, "Tina, you haven't lost it." And she walked out the room. As soon as she walked out the room, I put more salt and pepper and more seasonings and onions and this and that, and then stir it up and da-da-da. And then she come back, she goes, "Oh, that's smelling even better." She goes, "We should turn the heat down." I said, "No, turn the heat down." She goes, and she tastes, she goes, "Oh my God damn, I can cook. I know I can cook." That's the kind of fun we had. I remember staying up late at night. We would watch old black and white movies and stuff, or we would fast together. When Tina fasts, I fast. So we didn't eat. And I remember this funny story. One day we had fast, and we had been on the fast. We had one more day to go. And we did all the different herbs and all that stuff you do. And of course, it's very uncomfortable and all that stuff. And you're starving the whole time. And Tina, so she was asleep. And I thought, I can't take it anymore. So I got up and I creeped to the kitchen. I couldn't take it anymore. I thought, oh no. I said, because Tina was very into her health and all that stuff. I thought, this is great. I do feel better, but honey, I'm hungry. And I went to that fridge, and it was something out of a horror movie. I opened that fridge, and I was looking at all that food, trying to decide what I was going to have. And all of a sudden, she came up right behind me. She goes, "I can't take it either." She goes, "I knew you would be in this kitchen." I mean, and we both burst out laughing, and then we both burst out laughing so much that we go, okay, we can hold on for one. I mean, we went there with the intention to nick some food, and then we both caught each other, and then we both go, "Oh, come on, Ed, we've come this far. Let's one more day." And I go, "Okay, we can get through the morning." That's the kind of fun I had with Tina, and that's, those memories. Those memories I don't have with anyone else. Tina was my best friend. There's not a day that goes by that I don't miss her. There's not a day that goes by that I have to listen to something of Tina's. Lately, I've been really scouring a lot of my teen music, what I grew up with, Ike and Tina Turner, because that was the beginning, and some of the blues stuff. Oh gosh, you just can't, So, and I've got this beautiful poster I just got to show it in the camera. I don't care if you can't see it or not, but this guy,
we can see it,
drew this for me. His name is Pete with scribble, and
now we have that round circle from the light, so just twist it or tilt it a little bit, and hold it up more, like that. That's good.
Yes. And he did this all by hand for me, especially for me. This is the original that he gave me. And a friend of mine, John, told him about, because he does all these different celebrities, scribble. His name is Pete, and he did all these different people. And then he said, "Have you done Tina Turner?" Because Tina had just passed away. And he said, "No, I haven't." And he said, "Oh, can you do one for a friend of mine who's in mourning of Tina?" And he said, "Yes, of course." And then he delivered. He did this for me. so that means a lot to me. And behind me, I'm not going to move things around, but just so that you guys know that I did come prepared. Behind me are white roses, which were Tina's favorites. On my book, I was going to put a white rose on, but I didn't because it was the red rose that we threw. The white roses were for Tina when she was alive. The red rose was to say goodbye. And again, if you don't know, this is my new book, or you can't see with the light, but he'll show you later. It's called The Real T and Me. And we changed it to 2 decades of love, life, and friendship with Tina Turner. And this is the back of the book with this. I love this. And it just says, forever the best.
That's beautiful.
It means the world to me that I can share this with the world and my experiences, and just going down memory lane with you about all these stories is just, I feel incredibly blessed that my dreams came true, to meet the woman of my dreams. There'll never be another. I'm so glad that when you can get through all the bullshit and we get down to the core of love, that I have something to share to the world. And I was able to give the world a bit of an insight into what I've experienced. I mean, what that gift of experiencing my life with Tina Turner. And she was my teacher. She was my educator. She supported me in my music and my film work and songwriting. And she was always very supportive. I mean, I remember once I was in London and I had a photo shoot to do, and I thought, oh, what am I going to wear? And she was staying at the St. James Club. She goes, oh, Eddie, come over here. I'm sure you can get it. And it was really strange about us because, of course, I was taller than Tina, whatever, but we could wear each other's clothes. And spiritually, there's a lot of things that didn't, not spiritually, but there's a lot of things in the real world that doesn't make sense. But in the spiritual world, in my world, in Tina's world, it did. And I could wear her clothes. And so she said, oh, I got this and got that. And then and typical me, there was a couple things that were off limit. And I went and I would go, oh God, I'll wear that. I found it. She goes, oh no, I forgot to tell you, that's off limits, but you can go back over on that side. And that's the kind of teasing we would have with each other, and you talking about laughter. It is true when you see Tina in the interviews and all that, and she's always smiling and laughing. That's true Tina. She loved to laugh. She loved being happy. She wasn't a long-faced, depressed kind of person. She would have her good days and bad days like everyone else, but we had so much in common. Like we both loved the rain. We loved great food, but we both love. I have fashion. Fashion is a passion.
And that's also why you took the name Armani, right? That was Tina's favorite, designer, of course. Gerard Augustine.
Yeah, because when I used to go shopping, when we used to go on the road, and then because I had all my responsibility stuff to do with Tina, so the time I had for myself is I would have to get up early and go shopping, and I'd go shopping, and I used to always, I don't know why I used to do this, but because I was always broke, I would always end up having to try to borrow some money from. But see, I had it really good because I would always go to dinner with Tina, or I would eat in Tina's room and whatever, and I'd have to pay for that. So I would kind of overspend my per diem and money and whatever, and I go shopping, and I would sneak back into the hotel and get my bags in the room. I have always had this thing, and I learned, I picked this up from my mother and from Tina. I never wanted anyone to know how much I spent on something. I would just be like, oh no, oh, I don't know, And Tina would go, all right, Armani, what have we bought today? What have you got today? That's how it all came about. And then Lejeune,
who was an Iket? Lejeune was an Iket, and then she became Tina's dancer in the 80s, obviously. So she was probably the one that stayed with her the longest time while performing with her, Lejeune Richardson.
When Lejeune was an Iket, she was Edna Richardson. And when she worked with Tina, she became Lejeune. And Lejeune is actually Edna's middle name. No, it's Edna Lejeune Richardson or Lejeune Edna Richardson or one of them. But Tina renamed her also in part of because Lejeune was such a beautiful name and Tina loved it. And Edna was a little bit like Edna. And then Lejeune adapted the name and used it. But before that, Lejeune never used Lejeune. It was Tina, again, influence, said, oh, it's such a pretty name. And Annie's real name is Annie. But Tina never called her Annie. She always called her Anna on stage, if you remember. You know? And
yeah,
Tina
Anne
was
Berenger, right?
Anne Berenger, yes. And Tina kept Anne Berenger for part of the deal was Tina kept and Lejeune and Anne Berenger were great together. And Lejeune could always go on and work with other people, but Annie couldn't. Annie was only as good as working with Lejeune. Annie wasn't that good of a dancer and all that. She had the look and all that, and she couldn't sing. But she had the look, and it worked with Lejeune. And that's the look.
Those two are so significant in Tina's career, and they're kind of part of the whole DNA of Tina and Tina's comeback in a way, right? With Let's Stay Together and all those
absolutely
songs.
Absolutely. And they we don't remember any of the other backing dancers, singers that worked with Tina except for Annie Lejeune. Are you ready for me?
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's like being with you. We always end up on those, don't we?
I know. I hope you're getting what you want.
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good.
So
I just don't want you to be disappointed after all this time.
One thing is, of course, very significant when we talk about Tina Turner and how, when you see an impersonator or you see somebody who has to act or play Tina or pretend to be Tina or do a show as Tina, it's always that big spiky wig from Private Dancer, that era when she revamped her look. She had that major comeback. She was suddenly the talk of the town and the most successful artist in the world, being 44 and 45 at the time and still looking sexy and vibrant.
Incredible.
And beautiful. There was another, she found the fountain of youth again. It was almost like in the early part of the 80s with that flat hair and, she looked not old. She looked wonderful, but it was almost like there was a major change that came along with that comeback and the spiky hair, those huge wigs. And I know that you were part of influencing that and actually revamping her entire look. And she taught you how to do those wigs, huh?
Absolutely. And when it came to from the early Ike Tina days, Tina always made her own wigs, and they were very. That's why they were so incredible. If you look back on old footage from the Ike Tina Turner days, I mean, the Ikettes had good wigs, but if you look at Tina's wigs, they are amazing. Amazing. I use that word amazing because she taught me how to make their wigs, her wigs, and it was very time consuming. It was very I had the patience for it, and I could do it because I studied hair in school. So I ended up graduating and getting a license to be a cosmetologist when I was in high school, and Tina knew that. So and I was always been fascinated by hair, and then me being black, wearing I always wear my hair straight, and I used to relax my own curly hair, and used to make it straight, and I loved it. And of course, I used to dance on Soul Train with Jody Watley and Jeffrey Daniels and Jermaine Stewart, and so we were all, it was a change in look. But I've always been fascinated by straight hair. I've always been, but not just straight hair, hair in general. And then when Tina knew I had this fascination, she was like, "Oh, you like hair? Okay, great. Here you go, Eddie. You can help me." And that was the beginning. Oh gosh, I colored one wig. I colored for Tina, and I messed it up, and I was so embarrassed. And those wigs used to cost a lot of money. That hair was so expensive, and all the time it took and whatever. And she said, "It's okay." And I was like, "Oh, you're not mad at me?" She goes, "Oh, I'm not mad at you." She says, "But you're gonna fix it." She goes, "Oh, don't worry about that. You're gonna learn now." She goes, you took I loaned you one of my good wigs, and you messed it up, so you're gonna fix it. And that was Tina's way with doing a lot of stuff too. She was very good with she didn't explain things, and she didn't pussyfoot around. She didn't hold you by the hand. She wasn't sweet. That wasn't Tina. Tina was very matter of fact. This is the way we're going to do it. She'd look you in the eye and say, "Okay, fine." So she looked at me in the eye and she said, "Eddie, you messed that wig up. You messed it up really bad. I could either throw it away, but I'm not going to throw it away. You're going to fix it." And I went, "Oh, okay. And how do I do that?" And she showed me. And that was the beginning of me. And then when I started making the wigs, and then we started changing. It was
because it turned green, wasn't it? You made it green.
No. Well, actually, that story, we colored the hair, and then the day of the wedding, when we looked in the daylight, we looked in and the color had gone funny, and so the hair was more green than it was ash blonde. And then she was furious with me that day. Oh gosh, all through the wedding or whatever. See,
what wedding was that, Eddie?
That was there was a guy in her group called what was his name? Lovely love. Oh gosh, it's running.
Not Kenny Moore, obviously.
No, not Kenny. The keyboard player.
Was it Bob Fight?
Chuck. No, it was Chuck. Chuck.
Something. Yeah.
Yeah, Chuck.
Osteen, it was or something.
Yeah, Chuck Osteen. Thank you. It was Chuck Osteen, and wait a minute. Was it Chuck Osteen's wedding, or was it Tina did 2 weddings, and we were there. Oh, I think it was Chuck's, but for some reason I'm thinking of Chip Lightman and Kathy Lightman's wedding. Also, I think they had their wedding at Tina's house too, didn't they?
I think there's a story you tell about that.
Anyway, going back to the story, yeah. So Tina was really upset. And what happened was, I was supposed to, Tina and I had been up for 2 days. We went to the flower mart. We got the flowers. I got up on a ladder on the roof. We put flowers everywhere. So exhausted and da-da-da. And in the midst of all of this, I forgot to bring my clothes to change into, to wear to the wedding. And Tina was like, "Oh, Eddie, don't worry about it. You can borrow something of mine." And I was like so tired. I just wanted to get, because it was so much wedding and so much going on, and we had all this to do. And Tina didn't have a lot of money in those days. So we were on a budget and all that stuff. So I said, I'm just going to run home and do whatever. Da, da, da. Anyway, I went home. That was what it was. And then Tina was left to finish getting ready and doing her hair. And I had fallen asleep. I thought, I'll lay down for 20 minutes. And I overslept. So she had to wash her hair out herself. And when I got back, of course, and she was furious with me. And when Tina was upset with you and she was furious with you, It wasn't a whole lot of cursing, crying, and carrying on. Cussing, crying, and carrying on, quote unquote, what used to be an Ike and Tina Turner album. She would give you the cold treatment. And I do have to say that there's a lot of things that a lot of my friends will tell you. I have, well, of course, over the years, from such a young age, she was my idol, whatever. But I picked up so many different things. There's one piece of hair that's bugging me. And there was a lot of things about Tina that I didn't know about Tina that I was like. And then all of a sudden we got to know each other, and we were so much a part of each other's life, and we were so much alike in so many different ways. Like I do that. Instead of cussing, crying, and carrying on and getting all emotional, I go quiet. I get people the cold treatment. I just go really cold. And Tina was the same way. She would just like be very, just ice you out. And it was strange sometimes when we used to get into like a little bit of like, she was driving me mad or I was driving her mad. And then she would give me the cold treatment. And she'd be very like, give me that Tina. Okay, Ed, it's okay. I can do it myself. You can go home now. And whatever you kind of wanted to do, Tina was also very good with cutting those plans to let you know, like, if Tina and I had plans to do something, but we had gotten into a little bit of a Barney, and she wanted to punish me, what she would do is just like, she wouldn't say anything. She wouldn't raise her voice or anything. She'd go, oh, Ed, you can go home now. And I said, oh, yeah, but aren't we going to go see Olivia Newton-John tonight? She goes, no, it's not necessary. We'll pass on it. But she knew that I really wanted to go see Olivia Newton-John. So my punishment was we weren't going to go see Olivia Newton-John. Or she could be really icy, freezing,
Really?
ice cube, cold. Yeah, Tina could when she wanted to be. But anyway, yeah, so doing the wigs and doing all that stuff is basically, she taught me how to do it. And I tell you something, making wigs and doing hair is an art of all of its own.
Because it was real hair, right? And you had to dye it. I mean, you had to.
Oh, yeah, always only 100% human hair. And what we would do is buy the hair on a weft. And then what we would do is lay it out, and then we would color it. But it was, Tina had this grand idea. And I do have to say, give Tina her props. Tina invented, responsible for a lot of different things. But, all the hair that they all wear, look at my hair with the darker roots and then the lighter cut, that was Tina's invention. Nobody did that on a wig or a hair before Tina did it. And I am a witness to tell the world that was Tina's invention. Because what she did, Tina always had a very good eye, and she studied things. She would study me, for example. She would study something. Like if I went out and I went shopping and came in and something, and she would just kind of look at me for a second. She goes, where'd you get those shoes? And I go, oh, they're just Converse. She goes, oh, I love them. We have to get me some Converse. Or she would go, I'm liking that look you're doing. And I said, oh, I got that from Rod Stewart, kind of like a little bit. She goes, okay, we got to do that. We got to do that look for me. She just picked up on things so quick. I mean, there was times that Tina would give me clothes, and she'd give me things and whatever. And she, it could be like a couple months old, sometimes a year old. And I'd come and I'd be looking good and walk in, and she goes, where'd you get that? She goes, you look really good. Where'd you get that belt from? Or where'd you get those trousers? And I said, you gave them to me. Don't you remember? She goes, oh, no. She goes, honey, you take those off now. You giving them back. I mean, that's the kind of fun we had.
She took it back because she didn't remember giving it to you?
No, she took it back because it looked so good on me that she wanted to have it back because she forgot how good they look.
But that was a little bit egotistical, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It was all done in fun and play. I will completely. No, it wasn't. It was almost like playing dress up with your girlfriends, or and like I said, I never, I didn't want to be a woman. I never dressed up as a woman or whatever. Tina had a very unisex kind of look thing off stage and whatever. Like, for example, I went to her house one day wearing a pair of Levi's, and they were just perfect, where I got them just before all the big rips were fashionable, but they were faded just right. They were Levi's and they fit perfect and da-da-da. And she goes, oh my, I love those. And I said, oh yeah, I've been working on getting these just right for so long, da-da-da. And she goes, take them off. Let me try them on. I take them off, try them on. And she would be like, oh, these are Eddie, honey, I'll give you the money. Go buy another pair of Levi's and get them right like this again. And then we'll exchange again. And no, she was very, very, kept her eye on the ball. So that's how the wigs started, you know. When I came into the picture, we were kind of co-creators together. I was quite young, and well, you remember I'm only one age older than Craig, her son. So I had more of the street sense of things. Like I used to watch MTV had just started, and I used to come to Tina about Billy Idol and these new artists and whatever. And Tina always listened and observed what I was bringing her. So a lot of the youth and the youngness and the freshness of Tina, going back to what you had brought up before, after Private Dancer, before Private Dancer, after Tina went solo, after and she looked quite mature and still pretty and all that stuff. But then after Private Dancer, how Tina turned back time. She went young. She went youthful. Well, a lot of that, out of fairness, was that when Ike and Tina were together and Tina was young and a teenager, Tina never had a chance to be a teenager. So after Private Dancers, when Tina became a teen, her spirit became a teenager. And that's why when she was doing Break Every Rule and she was, posing and, doing Private Dancer and all, Tina was having fun acting, I love Typical Male when she does that video when she goes up and she's bamming and knocking things around and doing this and doing that. She was all of a sudden turning back the time of that youth period that she never got. She was actually being young. That's why it was important for me to put in my book about James Ralston experience, because she was breaking out of that mold of the Henry Weinberg conservative, supposedly rich Beverly Hills man, to all of a sudden being with a rock and roll guitarist. I want to be rock and roll.
Well, after you are revealing this, that she had quite a few affairs, quite a number of guys that she dated before she found Irvin and married Irvin.
Oh, no, she did. No, she did. She, unfortunately, though, and out of fairness to Tina, she had a lot of, she was experiencing dating, because she hadn't dated really. And she went out with some really, really lovely men. I met most of them. I liked them. I mean, there was Axel, who I put a picture of, who was German, in my book, with the fur coat on, very, very terribly handsome. And like Tina says, none of them were the right man, but they all influenced her into blossoming into dating and being who she was. Like Axel's the one that talked to her about getting her breasts done, and she always wanted to have her breasts done. That's not a secret, because she had 2 children, and women's bodies change and whatever. So she always wanted to have that done. And then she was quite pleased, and Axel made her feel really good and special, and he was so handsome. And then she met Wim, who was Dutch. He was terribly Tina, and he was terribly handsome. He was, but he was married. And the thing about Tina too, and when she did her book, I, Tina, if you notice something, she didn't talk about her personal life. So I think that's why.
Never heard about you never heard about any of those guys. In fact, she didn't even mention you, which is extraordinary considering you were together at that time.
Well, I tell you something though. She didn't, when I found out that Tina wrote the book, I was with her. I was with her every day while she was editing it and this and that. Excuse me. The real truth is that Roger actually, Roger was the one that actually said to Tina, "Oh, you don't need to mention Eddie because da 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 da." Roger was so fucking zealous that I was going to have success on my own. Now, to some people, it might sound a little bit crazy, whatever, but he was so obsessed, because what happened was that I turned Roger down for a business proposition, a business. He wanted all the publishing to my song Pain. I wish at the time I had somebody whisper in my ear and go, "Eddie, you need to give him the publishing because this is what your life can be." I didn't know at the time. I just knew all the stories about people keeping their publishing because it's so much money worth and this and that. So I was kind of misled at the time. Roger never forgave me for that. And from that moment on is when Roger and I had issues. Because Roger was actually not so bad to me beforehand. But instead of him kind of being, and Roger was a little bit of a bitch, because instead of him coming to me and saying, "Eddie, this is what will happen if you give us the publishing, you'll make so much money, you'll have so much success and this and that," he ran to Tina like a little bitch and said, "Oh, Eddie's trying to hurt your career because he won't give up the publishing." And MC and my song Pain actually was supposed to go in the movie called Summer Lovers. That's when she did Johnny and Mary, if you remember correctly.
Yes, I do.
I do know my history. And anyway, I didn't give the publishing up. So then Roger pulled the plug on that. And from that point on, I noticed a change in Roger. He couldn't control me. And that's when Roger didn't like me. Rhonda couldn't control me. She tried to be like Roger, and Rhonda was actually quite cruel in some ways. She was a little bit mental cruelty towards me.
Oh, in what way? Really? She seemed so nice and warm and wonderful to me.
Oh, no, Rhonda wasn't. No, that wasn't Rhonda. I mean, Rhonda put on the front like that. Actually, out of fairness, and from your position, Rhonda got nice and more. Rhonda got nice after Tina's success. Now, oh gosh, you got me going around on all kinds of stories. But see, the difference is that Rhonda, before Tina's success, Tina had fired Rhonda. Tina had fired Rhonda way before her comeback. I basically had come in to take over Aleen's job, but was being prepped for Rhonda's job. But I, out of fairness and give due to Rhonda, I could have never done Rhonda's job because I'm not that bright. Rhonda was bright. But what I could do is do all the other stuff. And the other thing about it was that Tina and I were companions, and we got on like a house of fire. Tina and Rhonda didn't have that companionship like that. Excuse me. No, they didn't. No. Rhonda worked for Tina. And Rhonda was the closest thing to Tina. But they weren't girlfriends.
Really? Well, that's
no.
That's a very different side to the story than what I have heard and what people think, right? Because they were so close. And she was with her for 55 years.
Well, do you know something? No, people do get a little bit confused. It's like, for example, if you ask me about, I go on about my relationship with Tina. None of the Ikettes, except Ann Thomas, Lejeune never had a relationship with Tina on a personal level like that. Lejeune and Tina didn't go out to dinner. They didn't go shopping. They didn't hang out. Tina didn't hang out with Annie. Tina didn't hang out with the musicians. If they did a big party at the end of the tour or did this and did that, that was acceptable, and Tina did that. These people were not involved in Tina's personal life. I was. And that's where a lot of people, the haters, come in. But one thing about Lejeune, I do say, and I do say about Annie, every now and then I'll hear something about Annie saying something about me that's a little bitchy. But they weren't close with Tina that way. On stage, yes. Off stage, no. So let's clear that
Very,
up.
very surprising. And I mean, from their point of view, they probably were. But I mean, then again,
No, they weren't.
who
No, they
were
weren't.
that close
No,
to
they
Tina
weren't.
anyway, like you?
No, they weren't. They don't get it confused. I think people try to turn it into they. And I've heard Lejeune and Annie, and they're very appreciative and they like Tina, whatever. But they never had a relationship with Tina like that. I don't even think Annie, and I mean Annie and Lejeune never went shopping with us. They never had dinner with us, and never had lunch with us, unless we were doing a venue and it was the promoters were putting a spread on or something like that. But they weren't involved in Tina's personal private life. I mean, if Annie or Lejeune wanted to go to Tina's suite, they would have to call in and ask Tina. They could. I just went, knocked, and showed up, and I had my own key, and I usually had an adjoining room. Tina and I were maids. They were not that way with Tina, you know. No.
And what about Kenny Moore? That was her. She really loved Kenny Moore, and he was her piano
She
player
adored Kenny.
for
She
so
was her.
many years until he sadly died. He was like the ambassador of the Tina Turner band, right? He was amazing.
He was amazing. And I have to say that I look back now, and you got to remember something. Kenny was a part of Tina's first ever band without Ike. And all of a sudden going to that other level, that chemistry that they had with each other, that chemistry they had on stage with each other. And I say what you want. Tina's never had that chemistry with anybody else on stage. I mean, John Miles was fantastic singer. And I tell you something about John that really, I watched some footage the other day. John he studied Kenny a lot because he could give Kenny very close a run for his money. And don't misunderstand me. Nobody came close to Kenny. Nobody was Kenny Moore. But I tell you, John Miles was the closest thing.
He was wonderful as well. Both of them were so great, so great.
Yes, but my point is that Kenny was the beginning of Tina's solo career, and John Miles was a fabulous singer and fabulous musician in his own right, but they all try to imitate Kenny and Tina's relationship on stage. John Miles is good, but if you notice something, they all just repeat when Kenny wasn't there. They're trying to do Kenny.
Yeah, but Kenny was so special, and they had something you could just tell it was amazing when you see the videos, and if you were lucky enough, like I was, fortunately, to see him so many times and also to meet him. One very, very key person, maybe the key person, at least in the last 40 years of Tina's life, was, of course, Irvin, her husband, whom she married in 2013, and they met back in 85, I believe, and became a couple in 86, 87, 86, I think. And that was around that time when you met Irvin as well, and Tina fell in love. And then things changed, and eventually you broke your relationship and your friendship with Tina, which was a sad situation. But do talk about Irvin and your experiences and how Tina felt falling in love like that. I want to thank you all for watching my show, The Lucas Alexander Show, and this special tribute series I'm doing remembering the Queen of Rock, Tina Turner. She will always and forever be simply the best. Please like and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell for notifications. Your support is greatly appreciated. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again soon.